I'm going to talk to you about vRe7 as a broker of clouds, about going hybrid. My name is Sam McGeown. I'm a lead consultant for Extrovert. I deliver all sorts of cloud platforms and automation and reference architectures and all sorts of things like that. I'm a vCDX CMA and also an AWS solutions architect. And also vExpert. Find me on sort of Twitter and on Slack and Socialcast and things like that. And also I'm an active member of the London vMUG as well. Just on that, it was plugged earlier, but get involved with local vMUGs, and if you don't think that you've got something to talk about, you're wrong. You have an experience of using this software and stuff. Think about like a story, a project, something you've done, and do local talk. It won't change your life, but it will change your life. I started off a couple of years ago doing presentations at the local vMUG. I did a short one and a bigger one. I found it's something that's helped me professionally, it's helped me connect with people, it's helped me network. I got the vExpert stuff through blogging and through being involved. And it really, my career started to take off when I got involved with the vMUG. So I really want to plug that to you. If you want to push forward in your career and stuff, vMUG is a great way to do it. That said, let's move on to some of the content. So today, my slides are themed on the Lord of the Rings. I quite enjoy Lord of the Rings, but it's actually for Simon Eady because he's the geekiest person. If you want to lose 3 days of your life, ask him about Middle-earth lore or something like that, and he'll be going off. But as we all know, Legolas likes to state the blindingly obvious, so all of this stuff is from analysts who have had surveys. But to state sort of blindingly obvious stuff, clicked. On-premises is here to stay for now. As Joe was talking this morning, hybrid is the way forward, the model for companies using cloud. Nobody's, or very few companies can go completely all in with the public cloud solution. Most companies are going to have legacy stuff. Most companies are going to have stuff, data that they may not want to put out in public cloud. So the obvious fact is that on-premises is here to stay now, and it is on-premises because a premise is a logical argument, okay? Just to clear that up. Cloud adoption's on the up, hear it all the time. More and more people moving into cloud, more and more people doing this hybrid model. Cloud's becoming easier to consume, you get shadow IT and people are consuming cloud whether you know it or not. So cloud adoption is on the up. And cloud mobility is going to be a really big deal. For me, this is whoever cracks this first, the whole cloud mobility thing is going to win. It's not there yet, but things like what Joe was talking about this morning, the cross-cloud architectures, various sort of DR companies that are now doing replication between clouds. You've got people like Velastrata who you can migrate your workloads between different clouds, all of those sorts of solutions. The ability to, with NSX, to create overlays and migrate between clouds, all of that sort of stuff is moving. It's really exciting, it's moving in the right direction. I don't personally think it's there yet. I think in a few years' time we're going to be seeing workloads move back and forth between clouds, and it'll be the norm. But it's not here yet. And all of this means that hybrid is the way forward for most people. Most people will have their on-premises workloads and they will start deploying. Maybe they'll cloud burst, or maybe they'll put development or some part of their business in the cloud, but they won't go all in yet. So, what's that precious? What are the top cloud challenges? This is again told to me by analysts from their surveys, but it's also borne out by the experiences that I have as a consultant going out into companies and talking with them and saying, you know, okay, I'm here to do a cloud project. What are the problems we're trying to solve? What are we going to actually do for you? What that makes this, you know, this ridiculous amount of money that you're paying me worthwhile? The first and the biggest one is people don't have resources or the expertise, and that's a big challenge because obviously, if you don't know how to do something, it's very difficult to do it. You have to pay a lot of money to have a consultant come in and do it for you. And those sorts of expertise, there is a big demand for it. If you look at Amazon, the number of jobs that Amazon have open is ridiculous. Just in the UK, in London, there's around 460 job positions open in Amazon. So cloud cloud skills, there is a big dearth of them. Security and compliance is a huge one. There is a big concern among financial institutions, insurance, all those sorts of companies where the data is legally needed and protected and compliant with various standards, data locality, people who get audited. It just feels more comfortable for them to say it's on our premises, we know where it is. And there are legal issues sometimes with the data locality. If you don't know where your data is going to end up, is it going to be in a different legal jurisdiction, all that sort of thing. So that becomes a big cloud challenge to adoption. Managing multiple cloud services, particularly you see this whether in the development environments where one development team might have a service in AWS that they're really wanting to utilise that service. Another one might be doing a similar sort of service but in Azure. Another one might do their own home-baked cloud which has a service that they're consuming there. And it's about managing, how do you manage those endpoints? How do you manage those different disparate cloud platforms as one corporate entity? And also managing costs. I mentioned shadow IT before. If you've got people who've got departments putting a credit card into AWS and you don't know anything about those costs until the next month when it's charged, it can be a really tricky thing to predict for a company. You don't know that if your developer's going to spin up another 20 VMs this month or whether they're going to kill off a couple. Do developers kill off VMs? That's the next point is governance and control. And how do you know that the VMs that you've got running in your cloud are still used? How do you know that they've been authorised by someone? How do you know that when their life cycle is going to end? So there's a whole bunch of challenges that are faced when you start moving workloads into the cloud. So how does the one cloud management platform rule them all? Another tie-in there for Simon. How does VRA as a cloud broker help you with this? So first thing is full lifecycle management. So you manage the lifecycle of VMs from beginning to end through VRA. You set a lease time on them. You give them a warning when they're coming to the end of their lease time, and unless it gets authorised and reapproved, the machine is shut down and removed. Okay, lifecycle management is a big thing. It's one of the biggest things that companies are doing to manage the costs, is actually finding out when a VM is finished, when a project is finished, can we get rid of that VM? Historically, as a sunk cost, you see people leaving VMs on a physical, virtualized environment. You see them sitting there for ages because nobody really knows what they're doing and nobody wants to shut it down because they don't want to break something in production, and it could be, we don't really know, we'll just let it go, and there's wasted resources. In a cloud platform where you're paying for every virtual machine, you're paying by the hour for it, it's costing you money and people are going to see that, and so being able to manage the life cycle of that machine is really important. Extensibility, being able to extend the functionality of the platform, so to be able to do the same things dependent on whether you're deploying to Amazon or your local cloud platform, your vSphere resources or Azure, but be able to have the same extensibility and have an orchestration platform, be able to register your user or stick a VM in Active Directory or go to an IPAM solution and pull out an IP address. All of this extensibility that is around VRA actually solves a lot of problems when it comes to uniformity across different cloud platforms and being able to provide that aggregated brokered service where the user doesn't really care which platform it actually goes to, they get the same experience. And the extensibility, you might need to do things slightly different for different clouds, but you can interface that in the same way through the same extensibility platform with VRA. And VRA 7, the event broker service, allows you to hook into a huge number of events in the life cycle of the virtual machine. Cost management through vRealize Business. You can, I'm not a massive expert at VRB. It strays a little bit too much in the business and a little way away from the technical for me. But you can plug into it the costs that a cloud platform or your local platform is costing you, and actually the user can go to the blueprints and say, if I run this blueprint in Azure, it's going to cost me X amount a month. If I run it in AWS, it's going to cost me X amount a month, and they can compare those costs and actually make cost-driven decisions around where you're going to place those applications. Now, if you don't have a cloud broker doing that, you've got to manually work out, okay, how much is this going to cost me a month? Has anyone tried to cost Amazon applications manually by just looking at the tables of all the different charges and working out how much data is going in and out? And really, really tricky. So being able to do that as a simple, this is what it's going to cost me to run in this application, in this cloud, this is what it's going to cost me locally. It's a really useful tool. Control, being able to authorize people, so you don't have to actually give them the keys to the kingdom and say, this is your account in Amazon, and this is your account in Azure, and this is your local account. But actually, they go to one platform, they sign in with one account, and they have their authorizations, and they have their everything that they're allowed to do is given to them from the one platform. It means that you can control who can deploy. You get approvals, which is really useful. That you can then go through the whole approval process, and the same approval process to manage not only your costs, but also to manage from a business side, actually, where are we placing things? Is it okay to approve this person to do another AWS VM, or should we be doing that locally? And approvals are wrapped into that. And also, obviously, multiple cloud endpoints. You can obviously manage with vRealize a multitude of endpoints, which takes me to the next slide. What clouds can I broker? So I had a little bit of a dilemma with this presentation, because there's a lot of new stuff just about to drop, or just dropping at this point in time, and it's just ever so slightly too late for me to spin up a new vRealize 7.2 and show you Azure endpoints. And there's a whole load of new stuff coming that was announced at VMworld, the AWS endpoints, so being able to spin up your vSphere environment on AWS. All of these things are really cool new things, which I can't obviously show you. And I'm still not quite sure where the beta ends and the GA stuff drops. So I'm not sure I can publicly say much stuff about all the new things that are coming. So some of this looks a bit outdated, because it is, but this is what you can do now. So obviously vCloud Air. vCloud Air providers, you can deploy to them. I've done some really successful projects in the past with using vCloud Air as a cloud bursting platform, where companies knew that there was an event coming up, and at that event they did about 90% of their yearly business. And historically what happened was their whole IT system, they had literally the whole company would come in during that weekend, and they would be literally sitting there hitting things and making it work and massaging the system to just scrape through. Whereas now they're cloud bursting out, they get a huge amount of extra capacity in vCloud Air that they can then process stuff without it all falling down. And it's a journey that they're on, it's a journey that myself and some of the guys at Extrovert have been helping them with. But it looks to be like it's going to be a big success, and that's using vCloud Air as an endpoint with their normal infrastructure locally. Obviously there's vCloud Director endpoints. I kind of bundle the two of them together because the functionality is almost identical. There's a few key differences. But there's a lot of new stuff coming out for the vCloud Air network guys, where NSX endpoints and the network virtualization stuff, which is going to be really, cool. And again, as I mentioned earlier, it's that cloud mobility thing where you can extend Layer 2 networks into your cloud environment and make it look like it's local. So there's a lot of cool stuff that's happening with vCloud Air, and as Joe said, it's not dead, it's another choice. Amazon EC2, I put EC2 there because basically VRA only interacts with EC2, and I'll come on to that a little bit in a minute. You can also broker OpenStack stuff, but I know absolutely nothing about OpenStack. I'm going to be hands up and honest about that. I'm not going to tell you about OpenStack because I don't know anything about it. There's only so much I can learn. And then the elephant in the room is Azure, which obviously has been coming for a while and should have now landed with 7.2 that you can actually do all of the things with Azure that you're expecting. So I'm going to read this list because it's reasonably new, but it's going to follow the AWS model where you have endpoint reservations and integration into the governance model, blueprints with Azure VMs, disk management, networking support, and lifecycle management. So all of this new stuff is dropping in 7.2, I think, last I heard. And 7.2 was announced GA Tuesday, I think it was, and there were builds happening this week, and we would expect it to land a couple of within the next week or so as a download. So that's enough of me talking about cloud stuff, which is more theoretical, and I'll talk about actually doing this, actually working with broker cloud solutions and doing that. So what I've got here is my go-to lab testing application, which I always use, which is a WordPress template. And my goal in this demo was to create this application that you see here, where you've got a load balancer sitting on top of any number of web servers, 1 to X web servers, a MySQL database which sits below it, and an NFS share which is holding all the files and stuff. And ideally some kind of network segmentation, that sort of thing going on as well, so that you get security between your web and your database tiers and all that sort of thing. So the on-premises approach, the VRA plus vSphere, I used to call this the traditional approach, but that makes it sound like it's going away, and I don't think it is. This is my scalable WordPress blueprint with VRA. So you can see here a whole load of boxes and lines. I don't know how well you can see this. Can you read the text on this? Right. Can you read it? No. Okay, so what you've got here is you've got a pointy thing. Yeah. Web tier, so a whole number of Linux web servers. On top of that, I've got some Apache install application package, and then a WordPress install package. Similarly, there's a database tier with a MySQL package and a MySQL database, which is the WordPress one, and then an NFS share that's deployed onto that application. I've got a load balancer being deployed from NSX dynamically, and a couple of networks that are dynamically routed VXLANs. And also on top of that, there are a couple of security policies up here which basically control my microsegmentation of distributed firewall in NSX. So it's all a bit of a complicated way of representing that application that it is this application. So it gives us, with the ISL, a load balancer, gives us web servers, gives us the NFS server and the database server, and microsegmentation. Now, I was going to demo this to you, but in my lab environment, it takes a good 40 minutes for that to come through. So what I will show you, it's not particularly large. Okay, so the blueprint that I created, that you've seen earlier, that's my blueprint, and I can go on a request. I can request that application, and you can see as part of the web tier, I can actually increase or decrease the number of instances and deploy the database tier as well. It's got all the application packages. I've actually pre-populated all the stuff, so you don't have to watch the timing, everything else, but there's different things like the database name and the WordPress user and all that sort of stuff. So I can submit that request and do one. And in true Blue Pizza fashion, here's one I prepared earlier. So I have my CentOS servers, and you can actually see I've scaled out this application So part of the 7.1 functionality that we've got the last release is we can actually scale in and scale out applications. So where there's multiple VMs in my web tier, I can actually scale that out. And this is all available via APIs as well, to scale in and scale out your applications. So I won't actually do that now because this is just the demonstration of it in my local cloud. So that's basically a representation of that. So the next stage of this is to come in at the AWS side. Another one for Simon, he likes his memes. One doesn't simply deploy to AWS. The reason for saying that is obviously at the moment, the NSX integration with AWS, as you might expect, there isn't any, without rolling something yourself. So you need to make sure things like subnets are in place. You can't dynamically create those networks that I created. That I think that's something that's being worked on, is being able to integrate NSX endpoints. You can deploy a separate standalone version of the NSX Edge and actually bridge into AWS, but that's all. It's all a bit do itself at the moment. The elastic load balancer, you need to deploy your elastic load balancer before you deploy to AWS. If you're trying to deploy this blueprint, I should have mentioned before, the NSX load balancer that gets deployed, when I scale in and scale out, the VMs are added automatically into the load balancing for that NSX, which is quite a nice feature. And you can do that if you've got a pre-staged elastic load balancer. When you specify that in your blueprint for AWS integration, you actually, when you scale in and scale out, it'll actually add you to the elastic load balancer, which is kind of a nice feature parity there. You have to have your security groups and your network access controllers pre-staged as well. And then you can cancel them as part of the blueprint. But it won't dynamically build rule sets unless you've actually put them in place. Getting your vRealize automation guest agent in a custom AMI, that's tricky, and I'm going to publish a blog post on that this week. But actually getting, you can't just use an out-of-the-box AMI. So AMI from Amazon's point of view is an Amazon machine image. It's basically their version of a vSphere template. So you have to deploy an AMI, customize it for VRA, stick your guest agent on, configure it to talk back. You also need to put in place things like VPN connections so that your guest agent can talk back to your vRealize deployment. And you'll need to be able to resolve DNS as well from that point of view. You need to be able to resolve the FQDN of your internal servers, your internal VRA servers. So it needs to talk back to APIs to get its tasks to be able to do the software deploys. So as per before, this is what my Amazon blueprint looks like. You can see I'm deploying Amazon virtual machines rather than vSphere machines, and a similar sort of setup. The software components I have to write slightly different for Amazon because they're not the same as my vSphere template, but if essentially you've got the same thing, you've got Apache coming in, you've got WordPress being deployed, you've got PHP installed on that. I've done that separately for some reason, I don't know why. Again, WordPress database, MySQL, and an FS share with a WordPress share folder, the documents. As with anything in the Amazon world, I've actually put 2 availability zones, a web server in each availability zone here. The reason for that being is Amazon don't consider your application highly available unless you're in multiple availability zones. So there's a big difference to designing applications in Amazon than you would say in vSphere and relying on vSphere HA. You don't have that functionality within Amazon. You have to split it across availability zones to guarantee your uptime. Predefined security groups are all actually in the machine image, so when you select the image, you can actually tick a box to say, put me in this network security group on the deployment. And in this scenario, Amazon wouldn't consider my application highly available because I don't have my SQL database that's split across multiple availability zones, and my NFS share is also not going to be in multiple availability zones. So it's a bit of a crowbar getting a vSphere way into Amazon here, which is a little bit more, Amazon wouldn't consider it highly available and particularly scalable either. I've got lots of single points of failure and things like that. So load balancer, I can do it. It needs pre-staging, but it is what it is. That's how we're crowbarring it in. I can do the scalable. I can stick it in scaling groups and things like that, and actually scale up my web tiers. I can deploy the servers just the same, and so network segmentation comes in with the control, the security groups, and the access control, the network access control is in Amazon. What this diagram shows is actually how Amazon would want you to do it, with multiple availability zones in a region. Your elastic load balancer sits across the top, and you'd have an auto-scaling group for EC2 compute over that would scale across these two availability zones. We'd actually use RDS, so the relational database services, to stick an Aurora or MySQL database in multiple availability groups, and then either an S3 bucket or the new EFS file system for Amazon for my file share. So this is a much more Amazon way of doing it. The problem with that is that that can't really be brokered very easily from VRA, and I'm talking about VRA as a broker of clouds. So what you actually have to start looking at is the APIs of the Orchestrator AWS plugin. As you can see here, it's a very pretty plugin with lots of yellow boxes and things. There's an animation on this one. Sorry about that, I try and avoid those. So there is an AWS plugin. If you animation on my slide, I don't know where that came from. I like this little note here. It says check frequently for additions and updates to these release notes. 11th of March 2014 was the last release of this plugin. Fantastically maintained. It is pretty. Sorry about the animations. It's old. It's very limited scope, and you can only configure EC2 stuff. And as you know, Amazon APIs, they are all over the place. You know, EC2, relational database, auto-scaling, or elastic load balancing, S3. These are all APIs that I could leverage. And my initial plan was, I'm going to just spin my own. I'm going to write a dynamic objects. Use the dynamic objects plugin to leverage the API, bring back all my things in. I'm just write my own XAS blueprint for this, or even use CloudFormation to define my application and spin it up and call that from the API. I had such grandiose plans, and then I hit the Amazon authentication, which is tricky. I don't know if many people have used the API authentication, but there are some hoops that you have to go through. You need to use some crypto stuff, which I spent a long time working with the crypto.js libraries to try and to do all the various hashings and things that you need to do to be able to talk to the API to get my token to talk to the API to then be able to get all of these things. But what I found was that the crypto.js libraries don't do the same thing. You don't get the same result with the crypto.js as you do with the Perl libraries. So I ended up writing a Perl script that I then called from VRA, and it started to get more and more complicated just to get an authentication token. And I thought, nobody is going to do this in real world production times. It's just me and my little science project in my lab. So, as a broker of EC2, it's fantastic. You can spin up EC2 and you can do various things. As a broker of all of Amazon's services, that's something else. You can use the API. It is possible. It is really tricky to do, and it's so tricky that I've got about 5 blog posts that are half written, and I can't seem to coherently put them into a succinct thing of this is how you do it. And I've gone on to do other things now because it's that difficult. There may be some people who think that that's stupid. Of course you can do it. You're doing it the wrong way. You're an idiot. I'm not a programmer, so it's me hacking away. But if anyone does know how to do it, hit me up on Twitter. I'd love to see how you do it. Okay, so I'm going to do some general recommendations for cloud brokering across VRA. One of the important things is connectivity. At the end of the day, you're going to need some form of VPN in and out of your cloud. You need to sort of think about routing and DNS. You need to think about controlling that access in and out from your cloud. How do you keep it secure? Very few apps exist in isolation. Very few can be deployed, especially if you're using, for example, the software components in VRA. You have to be able to talk back to your VRA servers. So you've got to be able to make those API calls back to VRA to be able to actually get the tasks for software component installs. So you have to think about that kind of connectivity. The one option, rather than using your guest scripts, is to, your agent is to do install packages with the COE guest scripts and things like that. So you can use Orchestrator to fire off your guest scripts and do installations, scripted installations. What you don't get there is things like your lifecycle management of applications and easy scaling in and scaling out and all that sort of thing, which you do get with the vRealize automation agent. Load balancing, obviously I showed you an NSX load balancer. Being from my blueprint, AWS you can pre-populate with your elastic load balancer, but also things like look at putting it as part of VAC and vCloud Director, or even spinning your own load balancer as a virtual machine and using HAPoxy or something like that. What I would say is look to work with your cloud provider's strengths. If you're picking a particular one, don't try and shoehorn your way of doing it, so the way you've always done it, and this is why I want to do it this way. That always leads you towards disaster. You have to look at each environment as its own environment and work out the best way for that environment to be able to then deploy your application to that environment. It's not going to be a lift and shift yet. Obviously, as VMware's vision expands and we'll get to know all of the new features and the cross-cloud architecture and all that sort of thing, hopefully one day it will just be the same blueprint for everything and you can deploy it as you like. So what time is it? I'll try and give you a demo of my Amazon one. Although at this point, I've probably lost my connection. So the blueprint for my Amazon WordPress is slightly different to the one I reordered some components and I did the classic thing of try and fix my blueprint before presentation, and obviously you never get it finished in time. So I'm not quite sure if this is going to work, but there are no dependency lines and things like that on it. But you can see it's looking much more like the NSX vSphere one that I did before with, again, web server. I've tried to use the same software components for Amazon as I have to make them a bit more generic. So it's moved on from the screenshot of my slide. And it's 99% there. There's some I think one of these software components is going to fail because of the way Amazon gives me this value, the IP address value of the virtual machine. For some reason it returns it as a DNS name rather than an IP address, which is not helpful. But I'll at least kick it off and see where we get to.
So in the same way as I've pre-populated most things in the other one, I actually have certain options in here. So the instance type, just into a VPC, put in the network subnet, and this is a database here. So, background, this should start deploying. Watch the execution going on in the background. I'll flip to AWS in a minute. But what I wanted to do, not a huge amount of time left, is open up for any questions that anyone might have, anyone want to ask, anything like that. Yeah.
How do you get exactly traditional static structure? Because regardless of whether it's quite wireless, so we have three sites which are set the exact solutions. So straight away we have the basics of why transfers. But if that's going to be storage, might be softwares, something later that does one application.
Yeah.
Solve a lot of these platforms, large volume capacity, departmental analysis, APIs,
So I think the answer to that is using storage policies and policy-driven. The SDDC vision is that it's policy-driven. So rather than saying I want to deploy this application on this particular storage, you're actually saying I want to deploy this application on storage that has this capability, and then you have those capabilities flagged for a particular application, whatever. And similarly, you're abstracting away from the physical environment where you've got 3 different physical data centers. Actually, you're going up a level and saying, okay, these are the capabilities of these data centers, and I don't care really where this application is going to be dropped. I just need to know that the policies that will apply to this application, it needs X amount of IOPS, it needs to be able to have a dynamic network generated. That's the end goal for me. That's where you don't actually bother thinking about which hardware is actually going to sit on. Now I know in the real world that with everyone, we have to think about the hardware that's dropping on, we have to think about those things. Unfortunately, that I get to work in a sort of slightly more theoretical world of a consultant who comes in and says, yeah, this is the way to do it. And I don't have to know the day-to-day nitty-gritty of actually it's going to land on this bit of tin and I need to think about this particular nuance of it. I think it's moving in that direction and the policy-based stuff is going to be the solution to that. It's just... Yeah. Yeah. Is there one person that has a sort of overarching design for your thing, or is it siloed and different people do different designs?
Yeah.
So my answer to that is it's probably the overall design, whoever's overarching the whole thing needs to look at it. And is 10 policies the right number? Should you be looking at different policies and using them in the right way? That sort of thing. Yeah. Yeah. That's where automation APIs as well can help with the complexity comes in.
Two questions around that.
Yeah.
Do they want to improve them, or do they just say that they lip service and that's why it's a mistake? And two, are the interfaces reserved about?
So, without breaking any NDAs or anything like that, it's getting better. Azure it's not going to work at Azure in the way that necessarily you might use Azure if you were going pure Azure. but it is VMware's way of managing Azure. If that makes sense. The AWS thing, I've asked that question directly to several people in VMware about why is this plugin so rubbish? Why is it only last 2014 was the last deployment, last drop of it? My understanding, and as an outsider to VMware, my understanding is it's supposed to be improving, it's supposed to get better, and 7.2 should be assisting with that. So if we're talking about before version 7, so version 6.0, 6.1, 6.2, let's not talk about that. Let's talk about version 7.1, because I think that's the best release for a long time. And 7.2, I'm told, is going to be a really slick upgrade process, and again, without breaking any NDAs and things like that, it's a good upgrade process for 7.1 to 7.2. So I think part of the problem historically is the .NET code base that you see, the dynamic ops stuff, which is from the acquisition originally. That .NET stuff made it a nightmare. They're moving things out of that .NET code base into the appliance, and sort of easy there and dog food kind of thing that it's moving to Photon and making those components more modern application and monolithic .NET code base. So my take is it has been horrific in the past. Some people might say the install is still horrific, I don't know. I've done a lot of them, so I think I'll probably see it as a little bit of an easier time because I have the experience doing it. And I think it's moving in the right direction. I look back at the times when I deployed 6.0 and wonder how I'm still sane. Now I can deploy 7.1 and 7.2 in my lab very quickly without any kind of worries that it's going to go wrong. So it's a lot better and it's moving forward.
Sorry, very question. Have you architecture changes to say what
It's a good question. When 7.2, well, it's GA now, but I haven't got a bit, so I can't tell you. Watch this space. I might write a blog post on it. But there'll be other people like Grant Orton and Jan Elzane will do new stuff better than us.
So let's watch this fail live on Kelly. Let's still go. So I've got 2 AMIs deployed. I'll probably run out of time, but just to prove that I'm not lying.